Hello, beautiful light-filled souls. Today's interview is with a near-death experiencer I talked with in the last two summits, and this is the recording from the 2021 summit with David Ditchfield. He has a beautiful book called Shine On about his near-death experience, and his after effects are truly amazing. He composes music that he heard in the afterlife. He paints from scenes that he saw over there and really didn't have these abilities before the near-death experience. I'll get to that interview in a moment, but I want you to know that I love supporting writers. I have an intuitive writing course, and we're meeting at the end of November to celebrate NaNoWriMo. So if you are a writer, please check out that link. I'd love to connect with you. If you want to join my spiritual community, we meet twice a month on Wednesday evenings. So much fun to just talk openly about spirituality. And I do have one-on-one appointments. And I know if you're in a different time zone, some of my times might not work. I can work with you, and mornings and evenings. We'll figure it out. So may you be blessed, and please enjoy this interview. David Ditchfield is an NDE-inspired artist, composer, near-death experiencer, and author. A few years ago, he was dragged under a speeding train in a freak accident. As the surgeons fought to save him, he had a profound near-death experience, and he found he'd acquired astonishing new abilities. The first, an ability to create dramatic paintings of what he'd seen in the afterlife. The second, an ability to compose classical music despite being unable to read or write any musical notation to this day. His debut symphony premiered at a sellout orchestral concert to a standing ovation. He has since composed for other classical works, also premiered at sellout performances, and continues to paint and compose. Shine On tells his remarkable story. So welcome, David.
Thank you. Thanks, Tricia.
Yeah, so since the book just came out a year ago, tell me what it's been like to connect with people and what the experience has been like for you.
Well, for me, it's interesting because I'm actually quite an introvert, sorry, by nature. So I was actually dreading the thought of going out and having to promote the book and do interviews. But quite the opposite. I've really enjoyed it. It's just been amazing connecting with people, and it's very similar to what you were talking about earlier. That that it's coming to do this conference. You think, why am I doing it? But once you start, it's brilliant because not only are you connecting with people, but you find that the ideas are still coming through to you. You're still learning all the time. So I've learned an awful lot myself just by having conversations with people like yourself, and in this kind of arena, as it were.
Yeah, what have you learned? I'm always curious.
Well, I've learned that basically most people that I've spoken to, a lot of people who've had near-death experiences, because I hadn't before met anyone who'd had any NDEs, that there's this common thread that goes throughout, and that is that everybody comes back feeling like they've experienced unconditional love, and that is such a powerful thing, and it's such a great thing to be able to bring into your everyday life. And it's lovely to see how other people use it to sort of make their lives kind of more palatable and move forward and spread the word, as it were.
Yeah, and for me, that unconditional love, I've never felt anything like it. And I said this in other interviews, it shocked me because I didn't know that I could feel that good. Is that similar to your experience, or how do you compare your previous life to that moment when you experienced it?
Yeah, most certainly. I mean, I'd experienced love obviously before in my life, but it was nothing like the kind of the unconditional love that I experienced in the other realm, as I call it, and it's like I realized that my life before, that I wasn't actually opening myself up for love either. I wasn't letting it in, I wasn't. So you've got to, I realize now that that's also an important thing. You can't just come back into this body after that experience and expect that love's just going to be there at all times. You've got to invite it in, as it were. But it's
How do you invite it in? Because I talk about this. I just say a little prayer before events or before being in the classroom. Do you have a ritual?
Yeah, I mean, I meditate quite a bit. I've been doing a lot of meditation this past year, and up until that point, I was going for spiritual healing, and I've not been able to do that for over a year because it's a hands-on sort of situation. So I've missed that. But spiritual healing is great. You know, it's just like it's a wonderful process because it is almost like a form of a meditative state, if you like. But you know, I'd go to it's a small spiritualist church that I go to, and there'd just be a handful of us there being healed. Like one or two healers will just lay their hands on you, and they will sense the energy coming through from their guides and my guides, and you feel that energy coming right through, and it's amazing, you know. And it's like, for me, that's my church, if you like. That's me connecting with the universe and with my guides. So that's how I basically tend to connect. Yeah.
You know, a lot of people always ask me, well, how do I know if I'm imagining this? And I always say it's energy. Like you can feel the energy of this love or this light or this, it overtakes you in a way. It's so powerful. And hmm, could you open to that before your near-death experience, or was this something that happened after your experience?
Well, before my experience, you know, I realized that I was living my life. It was very linear the way I lived my life. You know, I wasn't. I avoided adversity, if you like. Anything that went wrong in my life, I would just try and fix it. You know, but by putting a band-aid over it, if you like. You know, i.e., going and going to the local bar and having a drink or what have you. And I wouldn't really ever get in touch with my true emotions, the true me, the true David. I realized that I was acting all the time, trying to be somebody else, trying to be something else, because I never quite fitted in or found myself. So if you're doing that, you don't really experience full unconditional love, and you're not able to give it either. If you're acting all the time, you're not really giving pure love back. So yeah, that's changed now. You know, you know, love for me now is a very important factor of my life. And you know, I don't just mean in a one-to-one relationship. Yes, that, but also just even just with friends and associates. You know, you learn to love them more and see them in a bigger picture than what you did before.
Did it, how did it affect your relationships with family and with others? I mean, have you found that you have developed new friendships or those relationships are still continuing better?
Yeah, that's interesting. Quite a few people say to me, you know, do you still keep in touch with your old friends? And like all of us, you know, the time goes on and you don't always connect with everyone, but we still keep in touch, as it were. But there's quite a lot of people who are in my life now were very much a part of my recovery period. So I felt a really strong connection with them, and that's remained, and that's kind of primarily very close family and friends. And so yeah, that's still there. But
Yeah.
I've met new people as well that you know, that are, you know, that are on my are more spiritual, if you like, that I'd never met before in my life, and that's great. It's great to have people that you can talk openly about spirituality and just chat about that, and you know, and get it. You know, you don't have to explain it to them. You don't have to say, oh well, this is, you know, this is what, you know, channeling is, or this is what spirituality means. You know, you just chat, and so that's great.
Yeah, kind of like this show. I think
Yeah,
that's part of why I
exactly.
do it. I get to talk with
Yeah.
people who just understand me. And, you know, a lot of the audience members do as well. They kind of fall into camps where they're longing for more spiritual experience or they are just there and want to connect. And so
Ex-
that's it's a lot of fun. So my first question to you is one that I've posed to a lot of speakers, and that is, after having the book out for a year and connecting with people, I'm sure you've come in contact with people who are really suffering, who have either lost someone or they were suffering during the pandemic, or they're lonely, or they, you know, they're cut
Mm.
off from family and friends, or they are longing for that spiritual connection and they don't have it. So on a practical level, what kind of advice do you give to people who are hurting for various reasons based on what you experienced in the afterlife?
Yeah, that's a great question because it's one that's very important to me, and it's something that's been important right from the start. Actually, even when I came back from that near-death experiences, was that I really wanted to help people if I could, and comfort people if they were about to lose loved ones, or they're about to pass on over themselves. And so that has happened quite a lot this year. I've had quite a lot of people get in touch and write to me, and so I'll take my time and think it through exactly what I'm saying. And I always start off and feel slightly nervous, because it's a big responsibility that I want to make sure that whatever I'm saying, is going to help that person, that it's right. But as soon as I start writing, it's interesting that I find that that I'm saying stuff that I am almost, again, going back to that thing of the learning process, that I hadn't even thought of myself, that I'm learning. So I feel like I'm being helped when I'm writing to those people, like I'm channeling to give as much strength back as I possibly can. And for some people, they're in a really bad way. And I will also say, look, you should look to sort of try and get medical help if you can. It's all out there. Get some therapy. Therapy's great. I had psychotherapy myself after my accident, to deal with post-traumatic stress disorder. So I talk about that and say that it's not just about spirituality. There are people out there who can help you. So I recommend both to work together.
That's fascinating that you feel like there are moments when you're channeling that help as well. So what near-death experiencers often have this interesting feeling around death. Like I almost get a little bit excited at the thought of the light and, leaving the form. And there's this odd excitement we feel about that transition. But it's also a grief-filled transition for those who are still living here. So sometimes our messages are misunderstood, because we're so joyful about the dying process, because we have this certainty, this knowing that we go on. How do you communicate that certainty to people who are struggling? So what do you tell them about your experience?
Well, what I tend to do actually is I also relate a story about, because I lost my mother, must have been about 18 months ago now, I think, or was it 2 years ago? Yeah. I'm terrible with time, by the way, so sorry, Mom. But basically I talk about that story because when my mother passed, she had a heart attack. So I spent the last night with her in hospital, and we spent an awful lot of time talking and expressing how much we loved each other. And I knew she was dying, and she did the very next day. And so I talk about how much strength I could draw from my own experience. And I knew that my mother was now in a beautiful place. I actually turned around, because when I went into the hospital and she died, I just said, well, Mum, you're going to love it where you are now. You're going to I just know you are. And she will, and I'd got that feeling within myself to be able to talk in that way and express that story. And that helps people, because it's kind of like I don't know, it's not confirmation. It's almost like affirmation that if I went through that and felt it, then they can as well.
Yeah, I think it's important that we tell our stories to people who are in transition, and I've even thought about more that we might all do. And I wonder if you've thought about this, but I've talked with different people about composing music that helps people, maybe with a meditation, or either for the people who are in grief or the people who are still left here. Like there seems to be this need for just more care for that process.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me, for those of you who have heard David's experience, there's so many great podcasts and so many different videos where he's told his whole story, but I want to zero in and ask you some questions about the angels, because of course, that means a lot to me. I saw angels who were healing my body during my near-death experience, and you did too. And take me back to that place where you saw that you were being healed.
Sure. Well, the first angel that I saw was the one that was greeting me, and I felt like I knew this angel. There's a familiar look on this person's face, and I say this person because this person was neither male nor female, so it was androgynous. But interestingly enough, he or she was just wearing a very simple black contemporary T-shirt, so nothing too ethereal, which I kind of expected, because at this point I figured that I passed on, that I hadn't survived the accident. And so that was interesting. And then two other female forms arrived either side of me. One was again wearing just a very simple brown dress with long brown hair, but the girl to my left was more sort of American Indian or Asian Indian or Brazilian maybe in appearance, wearing a traditional sort of dress. But their hands were just hovering over my body, and I could feel this intense energy that was coming from their hands. It was really beautiful and powerful. And it felt like again this unconditional love that was coming through their hands. I felt like every single molecule in my body was vibrating with this love, you know. And the interesting thing is that it wasn't, I felt like they were healing, you know, my physical body of what it had just been through. It had been through a tremendous trauma, but I knew that it was more than that. I felt like they were healing all the various sort of emotional wounds that we all have throughout our lives, and they were just slowly peeling them all off, and just getting down to the essence of my pure soul, and that's how it felt. So yeah, that it was a beautiful and powerful moment that I just wanted to go on and on, because it was just so great.
So when you described that moment, um, did you feel like the energy was being translated into you and you would unpack it later, or did you get a sense of what was actually happening? You know, what was actually being healed? Was it just kind of general?
It was yeah, I mean, I processed a lot of it afterwards and still do, you know, but there was a lot of telepathy going on at the time. So there was a lot of knowledge coming through, but the knowledge that was coming through was that you're okay, you know, you are loved, because I realized that I'd gone through my life carrying an awful lot of guilt and shame. You know, I always used to say that guilt was my middle name, and because I made so many things didn't fit for me in my life, and I was always kind of rebelling, and I was always an outsider, and so yeah. So, but at this point, all that dispersed. I felt none of that, and the past no longer mattered to me. You know, it made no. It didn't. I didn't care about it anymore. But also, I didn't care about the future either. You know, because before I was always worried about. I was always broke, and I was worried about how I was going to make, you know, the next day's wage. But it didn't matter. I was just there, and I was being loved, and I felt this absolute love, and that I was okay. I was a good guy, not the bad guy that I figured I was, that I told myself I was.
Yeah, you know, that's a beautiful experience that I wish we all could feel. And I think when it's translated into living, it's to give everyone a break, right? To just imagine that maybe they're doing the absolute best they can. And, you know, with their cultural upbringing and with their pain and with their wounds, like that light that we all are is being transmitted through all kind of layers of what we're going through. And so I think that helps. That's something I try to keep in my mind, and that helps me with not judging myself and not judging others, that really at the heart we are doing as well as we can, most of
Yeah,
us, you know.
yeah, absolutely. But also what I do carry with me from that experience is that time didn't exist. I don't know about you, whether you felt this, but it just, as I say, that the past didn't exist, so I wasn't concerned about it, and the future didn't exist, so I wasn't concerned about the future. I was just in the moment, in that present moment, and so I try to maintain that in my everyday life as much as possible. You know, things go wrong all the time for all of us, but I realize that the anticipation is worse than the actual event itself. Do you know what I mean? But it's so easy to go, oh my goodness, this has just happened. It's gonna, the whole thing is just going to collapse like a pack of cards, and that we're just building a story there before we even know where it's going. And so yes, I try to sort of maintain that feeling of being in the present moment and holding on to that, because it is, the present moment is the best place. You know, no matter what, if you're just about to face you've got a letter through the post that says you're just about to be evicted from your property, you're still in it, you're still there, you're not. It's like, well, let's not anticipate what's happening. We don't know yet.
Yeah, you know, the thing that people ask me a lot of times, and I bet you get this question in interviews, is how long did your death feel? So when when you were over there, did it feel like an hour, 15 minutes, a week? Is it hard to put a
It's again,
time
yeah,
stamp on
it
it?
is. It's very hard to put a time on it as well. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But because I also know for myself that I didn't want to let go of this place. You know, every single step of the journey was so beautiful that I just wanted to enjoy it, you know. And just like anything, if you're doing something, you're just enjoying it. You don't care about time, and that's what it was like for me. You know, when the three angels appeared and they were healing my body, I literally just rather than just kind of think, well, what question it or why are we here? Why is this happening? I just thought, well, this is just amazing, and I just laid back on what appeared to be a huge kind of slate rock. It was like a big medieval altar that I was laid out on, which you'd think would be very uncomfortable, but actually it was comfortable. It was great. And so I just kind of laid there and allowed all these events to slowly unfold and just keep absorbing them.
Yeah, you know, that timelessness. Your near-death experience is pretty recent, so I feel like you're still integrating some of that, and you know, some of it is still kind of new and fresh. But I have to say, you know, mine happened in '94. Sometimes I get very uh, tied to this reality, and that's why I love these discussions, because it reminds me of,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that timelessness is so much more beautiful when you slow down time, when you're really aware of the present moment and all of its power and all of its beauty. And that's why we all talk about meditation and healing and nature, because these moments tend to slow us down.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. You know, I mean, we've had a really. It's interesting going back to the pandemic when that first happened. Everyone seemed to panic in the UK anyway. You know, they were going and stripping the supermarket shelves of toilet rolls and whatever, which is the big headline joke. You know, and
Yes.
uh, and I just thought, just calm down. You know, this is actually a good opportunity for everyone just to stop. You haven't got to go to work today. You haven't got to get on that train and commute or what have you, you know. And then suddenly everybody did appear to enjoy it. I mean, we were blessed with like beautiful weather here. So people were just kind of posting up on social media. They're saying, oh, you know, I've just been out looking at the trees, you know, and all these listening to the bird song, you know, at 5 p.m. or whatever, you know, and just getting in touch with nature or creating. People were turning around saying, I've started painting or I'm baking cakes or bread for the first time in my life for my family, you know. And so I loved all that. And I thought, we've got that opportunity. So that was basically just slowing down and being in the moment. So it just shows how productive and organic and real it can be to be in that place.
I
It's just
loved
tricky, isn't it?
I love the pictures too in Europe, and maybe it wasn't England, but different countries where the goats and sheep started coming into the town centers and all these
Yeah.
animals started
Yes, I
showing
know,
up in
it's
the middle of
true.
towns.
It's like they knew they were picking up on the vibration of what's going on because animals do, don't they? They're all, you know, they all pick up on, you know, that's where that song Good Vibrations comes from. You know, it's like, you know, it was based on Brian Wilson saying, why is that dog barking at me, mum? And she said, he's picking up your vibrations, you know, and they do. So they knew what was going on. They could see that we were all kind of like not going to work and not commuting. So they thought, okay, I'm going to just go and hang out in the streets and, and you know, sit on a park bench.
So I have also been asking a lot of the speakers, what did you make of the energy of the last couple of years? And I feel like it's changed a little from last year to this year, but you know,
Yeah.
did you get messages from your guides and angels about what this time period is doing for us? Or, you know, did you have just any personal insights?
Yeah, I did. When it first happened, I actually felt if to me it felt almost like the whole earth had just stopped and just kind of had a jolt, and it's like, whoa, what happened there? That's how it felt, you know, but in slow time. And so I was very aware of the shift in energies. But when yeah, I always had a sense of optimism about it, which I still do, because I felt that, to me, I felt like, yeah, this needed to happen. A lot of people were constantly turning around and still do, saying, we just want to get back to normal. You know, we're sick of all this. We just want to go back to normal. But, you know, I keep saying there is no going back to normal. You know, we're moving forward into a new part of the Earth's evolution. You know, it's like we've come out of it very lucky, really. I mean, if we look at back over history, you know, there's been far worse things. You know, like there was the Spanish flu, or there was even like the Ice Age, where that completely wiped out everything that was living, dinosaurs, the whole lot. You know, we haven't had anything as dramatic as that. So we kind of had chance to kind of like almost regroup. And not only that, we're living in the 21st century where we've got the internet. I mean, the internet has just kind of kept us all together, really, because we've all been, I mean, Zoom's like huge now, isn't it? I mean, for families, friends and everything, you know, they'll all connect and carry on working as well. So, yeah, so I've felt quite positive about it because I kind of feel that it's something that, you know, that whole thing of people connecting with nature, I think that's really important, that we need to do that. You know, we're animals, but we're not this super race, you know. We are very intelligent, but we're also animals at the end of the day. And I think we need to try and remember that, you know.
Yeah, when we expect the productivity of ourselves of a machine, then we wear ourselves down. Like we need the natural rhythms of life, the going to bed early and waking up and working out. I mean, we need a balanced life in order to even feel spiritually optimal. You know, that if you're out of whack in one area, then you just don't have that harmony. And
Mm.
I think this pandemic and this time period has made us all look at how much anxiety we have and what to do about anxiety. So
Yeah,
that was another shift to help people come out of fear. And it's usually the answer is always love, isn't it? It's like
it
instead
is.
of worrying about the future, it's tune in to what is happening right now and how can you give love and how can you receive love, even if it's telepathically through meditation or through the internet.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. You know, it's almost another way to look at it is like if you walked into a forest and you look right closely at everything that was going on, you would realize that there's a fight for survival going right down to the smallest insect, you know, and the further you come back from that forest and you walk and you stand outside of it, you look at it and you accept it and think, okay, it's a beautiful forest and it's part of the grand scheme of things, you know, it's you accept it as basically. So, you know, I think it's good that it would be good if we could all try to, you know, I'm not trying to preach here, sorry, but, you know, I think it's a good idea to try and, you know, do that, to try and accept it and accept that it's all part of the grand scheme of you know, what the universe is giving us to at the moment, you know, and that it could go somewhere really, really positively. I mean, I know this, but we've lost people, you know, there's been, you know, I've had many COVID cases in my family and stuff like that. So I know it's very scary. But, you know, there's, like I say, you know, there's no adversity also brings new chapters and new horizons.
So another question that I'd like to ask you is the after effects. I'm sure you get asked this a lot, but what really startled you after your near-death experience about how you looked at the world, how you processed the world? Was there anything that you were like, wow, this is really different? I feel so. Was it immediate or was it a few months? And what was that experience like for you?
It was immediate, actually, yeah, and because I felt like I was still connected to that other realm. You know, after my near-death experience, they were just about to take me into the operating theatre, and so I went under for about 8.5 hours, and so I was in this room on my own in the hospital that they'd given me, and I remember just lying in this room and I couldn't move. I got tubes coming out of me, and I just got this little machine bleeping next to me. It was like R2D2 from Star Wars, and it was just me and the machine, and part of me was like thinking about the awful accident because it's a huge thing to have to deal with because I'm still, you know, I'm still human. I'm not superhuman. But the majority of my thoughts were, wow, what about that experience? What was that? Why have they sent me back? And how am I going to tell the world about this? You know, and I was just, I knew nothing about near-death experiences when I'd had mine either, you know, so I just thought, am I the first person for this to happen, you know, and will people believe me? But my friends and my family would come and see me, and that's when I knew that something was still there because they were all saying that I just had this glow of energy coming from me when they walked in the room. And these are non-spiritual people saying this to me. These are my friends, you know, that I'd worked on the construction sites with and that, you know, so I knew that there was, yeah, that the connection was still very powerful.
Yeah, and did
So
you still feel the other side? So did you feel communication and do you continue to feel communication from the other side? I know you do in your healing, but do you ask for it and do you receive what you need?
I tend to, going back to that word channeling, I channel a lot, especially when I'm creating, when I'm either writing music or painting. That I channel ideas through. I don't ask for it. I never say, "Can you help me with this piece of music?" I never do that, because there are obviously days when it's not coming together. But I think it'll happen. But when I am channeling those ideas through, I just know it because it starts to something comes together. Like for example, with the painting, the very first painting I did, I'd never done anything like it before in my life, but I decided in the hospital that very first night I was going to do a huge canvas, and I thought it's got to be like the big Renaissance paintings in Rome, the big dramatic biblical scenes. So that's what I wanted to do, and nothing was going to stop me. But once I started painting, the ideas that were going onto that canvas, I thought, wow, that's great, and I knew that it wasn't just me that was creating this painting. I knew that I was being helped. So that continues on there, and with my music and my art, and also, when I'm just doing things, part of the book promotion or just the book itself, writing the book, putting that together. I mean, I was lucky. There was a lot of synchronicity comes into your life, you realize, as well, after a near-death experience. And so the right kind of people just came along, like for example, I'm dyslexic, and I'd always wanted to write this book, but I thought I can't because I'm dyslexic. But then a friend that I hadn't seen for years got in touch with me and heard about the accident, and we got chatting. And she said, when are you going to write your story? I said, well, how can I? I'm dyslexic. And so she agreed to co-write it with me. So that happened. And then, the synchronicity led from that to one thing happening after another. And then suddenly the book gets signed up by publishers and it's out. And it's lovely. It's a lovely feeling, just to get the book out there and for it to be well received and for people to get it and write to me and say, oh, this is a life changer. This is really, I'd never thought about death, because we don't. That's one thing I realize now, is that we don't talk about death at all in Western civilization. And I'm not suggesting that we should be chatting about it all the time over our morning coffee, but why not just embrace it, but and chat about it, because we plan everything else, don't we, in our lives, whether it's birth, marriage, our driving test, but we don't plan the thought of death, which is going to be there for us all at some point.
So I'm asking a lot of the speakers this question as well, which is, did you have any premonition either before the accident or in childhood about, how your life would evolve or what would happen in your life? Or did you have any kind of inkling of this is coming?
It's interesting because I'd a couple of months prior to it happening, I'd been up to visit my sister and her family, and on the train I got chatting to this elderly couple who were confused about stations, and then the lady said to me, "Look, we're going to see a medium. She's great. She's unknown, but she's fantastic." I went, "Okay, great." And I was not interested at all, but she insisted on giving me this flyer. And when I arrived at my sister's, there was a lot going on there. It was very chaotic with the kids. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to go. I'm going to go and check this out and see what it's about. And I wasn't looking for any messages at all, whereas it was packed, and she was brilliant. She's called Julia Knight. And she was pacing around and saying, "There's, the lady over there, I'm picking up blah, blah, blah." And she was going, "Yes, that's my, that's my great aunt," or whatever, And then she turned around to me and she said, "Gentleman in the blue sweater, they're telling me that your life is going to change." I went, "Right." And this was a totally different tone. And I said, "In what way?" She said, "They're saying it's going to be big, it's going to be dramatic, but be prepared for it." And I went, "Okay." And I figured it was going to be a lottery win, or, the new job or whatever, but it wasn't. And so but I never thought that it was going to be, getting dragged under a train and having a near-death experience. But interestingly enough, on the day itself, Tricia, when I don't know about you, but just as I was about to leave for that station, even though I was non-spiritual at the time, I felt something was going on. And I talked about it with my friend who I was seeing off. And I said, what's happening? What's going on? Like my sister, I was staying at my sister's still at that point, and her cat came in and jumped on top of this really high cabinet. I was going, "What are you doing up there? Why are you looking at me?" And it was like the cat was warning me that something was about to happen. So there was a very sort of odd feeling in the air just before the actual accident itself.
Yeah, it is interesting because these moments are so powerful at a soul level. And I think we start Before the accident happens, I think we are outside of time and we're beginning, it's like that moment kind of ripples both backwards in time and forwards in time. And there's this sense of something larger is about to take place. And
Yeah,
certainly I
exactly.
felt that. There were
Did
these
you?
dreams
Yeah.
I had the night before that were terrifying. I'd hear like down this tunnel, my mother and father both screaming, telling me to watch out and I can't believe this has
Wow.
happened. And I almost woke up and I was almost mad at them, like I didn't get any sleep. So that I'm on my way to run that race and I didn't stop for coffee and then I had the accident. And so, there's this, and then a month before, and I purposely left this out of the book because my editor thought this was confusing, but I was 100% agnostic. And I had this moment where I just left my body at a comedy club and I was smoking pot and everybody was just having a good time and I left for a split second and I heard you are going to die and then I was back in my body and I
Wow.
thought I had some kind of psychotic break, so I quit smoking pot, I started running. I was just like, no more, I'm a healthy
Really?
person now. And
Yeah.
like up until that race I got into really good shape, and so I wonder sometimes if the wreck, if my body was strong enough to withstand, that moment
Mm.
because I started preparing for that race. So I don't know, there's questions. I just know that there were moments that let me know something was coming.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, also with my accident, because it wasn't an instant sort of head-on collision like yourself, that I'd actually got time to think it through. I knew that I was about to die, basically, because, the train engines were revving up and my coat was not going to get pulled free of those doors. And I thought there's no other way out of this, and I've just got to go with it. And it's interesting how actually had time to think through. I went into fight or flight mode, and I thought, right, I've got time to think this through. And I thought I'd seen a news item where a young child had been thrown from a burning apartment block and had landed on the ground and without any injuries. And I thought, right, just relax your body, because they say that infants don't tense up like adults. I thought that's what I'm going to do. So that just things like that helped me physically to have survived that accident without coming out with even worse injuries or imminent death. Yeah.
And tell me, in the healing process, did you feel your angels and guides in those months of healing? And
Yeah. Yeah,
did you
most
feel
certainly.
their help? Was that something you were aware of?
Yeah, I was getting that help as well, because I was my consultant, my surgeon who was working on me, he became very close to me and he said, "You're recovering at an incredible rate. We don't understand it. You were just like healing so fast." And I said, "I know," but I started to tell him why. But him being a scientist, he kind of like, yeah, okay. He kind of shut me up, which is fine, because without science, I wouldn't be sat here now. He saves me from a scientific point of view, and so he was amazing. But I forgot where we were at. Can you ask me the question again?
Oh
I
yeah,
lost
did
it.
you feel the participation of your angels, like in the when you times you were alone?
Yes, got you. Sorry, yeah, I did do. Yeah, I definitely felt them. They were like, as I say, I felt the power of prayer as well, because I knew that my mum was coming in and saying, there's a lot of people in local churches are praying for you at the moment, and I said I can feel that power. I can feel the power of their prayer coming towards me. So I'm a firm believer in that now. If anybody says, "Look, can you send some prayers out for so and so?" I take it very seriously, and I really give them as much as I can. Yeah, but they
Yeah.
most certainly were with me. Yeah, they still are. When things go wrong, when I'm going through a real tough time, they're most certainly there. I've been through a bit of a challenging time just over the past few weeks, and I felt their presence. There's little signs that tell me that they are there,
Oh,
which
you
is
get
lovely.
signs. So tell me about the signs.
Well, yeah, they're only kind of like little basic ones, because I'm not clairvoyant, and unfortunately, I wish I was, because it must be really exciting to be clairvoyant. But
Yeah, but
I,
some of us would trade our clairvoyance for painting and musical gifts. So,
yeah, okay, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm getting
we
spoiled, aren't I? Here.
we get different gifts.
These are just little things that I've come to know and see through the internet that people talk about, like things like synchronicity. When if I looked, it's not, it's 1941 on my clock now, but the amount of times where if I'm going through a hard time, that I'll suddenly look at my phone and it will be 1414 or 2121, and I think, oh, that's the sign. I always kind of go, I thank you. I always thank whoever's there for hanging out with me, and I know you're there giving me your strength, and that's absolutely true. And in fact, I felt it the other day really powerfully. I was driving home, and I was just coming over the bridge near where I live, and it's quite a long bridge, so I was just picking up speed to around 50, 60 miles an hour, and I was just driving, and then there was a car that thankfully wasn't too close to me in front. And that car hit what looked like a huge filing cabinet, and it ricocheted and just flew through the air and just came towards me, and it was going to come right into my windscreen. And I just kind of it was really odd that I just felt the sense that I was being protected, and I just didn't panic. It's almost like I slowly hit the brakes and stopped, and that thing just went rolling right past my car. And I just thought, what was that? And I just felt there was a strong sense of my guides, and I turned around and said thanks, and then thank them, and then drove off. So so that was an enemy, a near miss experience.
Yeah. So I wonder if there's something we could say to help people. A lot of people know that near-death experiencers often have faster healing rates because we've been to that side. I think it's a lack of fear and a lack of stress around the whole process, is the first thing. So getting
Yeah,
rid of fear and stress and going, you know what, I'm taken care of, and this is all going to work out fine. And then it's also connecting that other side, because meditation and that form of connection helps, and it's not imagination. So for those who struggle with that, just open up that belief that you can connect with angels who are there to help you, with a loving God that is there to help you in that moment, and spend some time in the energy of that, because it's also the energy that, we see how everything is translated through energy there. So can you add to that and tell people like how you worked with healing?
yeah. It's again, it's returning to that place of being completely in the moment, and letting go of the world around me. For example, the small church where I go for spiritual healing, it's in like an alleyway that runs down to the river, and right opposite, the building opposite is like a boxing gym, and there's all these young kids who are like going in there, and while I'm sitting there just going into the healing process, it starts off, and all I can hear is their trainer going, come on, really pushing them, and you can hear them whacking this bag, and I could quite easily just focus on that and think, oh, this is really too much, I can't do it because of the noise, and this is too aggressive. But I just kind of, first of all, I say that's a young kid who wants to learn a skill. Good on him, great, and leave him to it. I'm here doing my own thing, leave him doing what he's doing. So I go into the moment, I go into the present moment, and I forget about all that. And once you do that, and I feel the energy coming through my feet then as I'm sat there, and once the hands are laid on me from the healers in the church, that's it. It's almost like a bolt of energy just goes right through my shoulders, and it'll go through my body, and it will go to the points of my body that need healing. So it's all really a question of allowing it, that love and the energy to come through, because we've all got our own guides, all of us. We just don't know that they're there. I'd gone throughout my whole life before not realizing that those guides that I saw on the other side had been with me all that time. I'd never acknowledged them. So it's a question of allowing yourself to be to stop, and just, even if you think, oh no, I can't stop now because I've got to go and pick my kids up from school, I've got to do this, that, and the other. You can do it, and just allow yourself to be in that moment. It's like driving a car, actually. It's like, if you think about it, it's like when you get to a traffic light, you've got two choices. you either go, oh no, the lights are on red, that means I'm going to be late for this meeting. Or you can turn around and say, you know what, there's nothing I can do about it other than just actually sit here and just enjoy these few extra moments that I've got to myself until I go to this stressful meeting, And it's a bit like that, I guess, it's just allowing, stop, because we're all going, well, I can't, I've got to get here, I've got to go there. We haven't all got to go there or get there, it's just
There's this beautiful book called Tuesdays with Maury, and at the end of his life, he was giving advice to one of his students, and he said, people get so mad in traffic and mad about small things. He kind of jokingly raises his hand. He looks like he's going to flip
yes.
people off, and then he just waves. And so I do that as well. I just wave at people,
So,
try to
yeah.
spread a little joy in traffic, not anger.
Yeah, that's exactly that's what I do. I remember I was driving through London, and London's, because it's a capital city, but it's really old, so a lot of the streets are really tiny, And so I was driving down the street, and there was like this van driver coming the opposite way, clearly in a hurry, and it was like a duel, He wasn't going to give in, He wasn't, it was like my right of way, but he was just coming straight at me, and he was like hitting the horn full on, full of anger, And I thought, this is crazy. I don't even know this guy. Why is he so angry at me? and he couldn't get past. He stopped. He rolled down his window, and then he just started giving me a hurling abuse at me or whatever. Nothing too serious. Just kind of like, what, mate. And I don't know why. I just turned around and blew a kiss at him. And he laughed. He just thought it was hilarious, and it was almost as if to say, "What are we doing? Why are we having this ridiculous argument and discussion? We don't even know each other." And then he just kind of drove off with a big grin.
That's hilarious. Oh, someone on the comment section, it's kind of cute. They wrote that her name is Joelle, and she said, "David, I used a vision of your healing by the light beings to heal my recent bad fracture completely only in 2 weeks. I asked my cosmic healers to help me as they helped you, and it was miraculous." So
wow.
maybe your paintings are an inspiration on that level to people.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, thanks, Joelle. That's fantastic to hear. That's great.
Yeah, I love that. So if there are any other questions, please do rewrite them and let me see them. But I would like to ask David, or any comments that you want to give him. But another thing that I'm always curious about with near-death experiencers is, the future of what you want to do with some of these gifts. Like for me, I had a really specific mission, and it kind of sounds like you have a specific mission with the painting and music. But do you think about, okay, this is the legacy, or this is what I want to do with this?
Well, right from the word go, it's always been a part of my life, and I've never really let go of that. And so once I started doing the first painting, and then with the success of the symphony that I wrote, I just didn't want to stop. And also, people were coming to me and giving me commissions and asking me to write. So, the journey continued on. I don't like to plan too big, as it were. Obviously we need to plan. We need to sort of make plans of what we're doing, and it has to be, to be practical about them. But I just let things unfold as they were, and in their own natural, organic way. There's a way I tend to work. Yeah.
I like how you say that. It's almost like you surrender to the moment and let things unfold in a sense.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. That's the way it's been all along. It's like, it's with the music, because I'm not classically trained. I'm not trained in music at all. I can't even read or write a notation, but I'm still writing for orchestras, and it's still kind of like, when I turn up to a rehearsal, it's still kind of like quite intimidating, because people in orchestras, they're all lovely people, but they come from a very highly educated middle class background, most of them, and I'm walking in there thinking, I'm going to get caught out soon, and so, but it never seems to be that way. So it's great that it just kind of keeps developing at its own pace, and I never try to over intellectualize it either. You know what I mean? Like, especially with the classical music, I think, if somebody turned around to me and said, "Look, we want to offer you a scholarship to go and learn how to write classical music," I'd probably turn it down and say, "No, you know, it's working for me this way, and it's because it's coming right from, it's coming from another place. It's coming from my soul, from me, but it's also coming from somewhere else. I'm still channeling all these wonderful ideas through. When I say wonderful, you know, it's only because the ones that come through are wonderful, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm going to switch over to Lisa Jones. And for those of you who don't know her, she has a website, The Millionaire Medium, but she has a question for you too.
Great.
Hi, David. I just wanted to say, oh my God, just sitting and listening to your story, I feel like you're just emanating this beautiful energy. I'm literally in tears just hearing you.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, behind you, is that a little painting there? I'm not familiar with your work, and so this has just been such a wonderful.
Oh yeah, that's one of them. Yeah. They, you know, this is where I live and work here. This is like a converted mill where I live, you know, and it's like
Wow.
and the light's beautiful. I'm right next to the river as well, so I've got that thing of being close to nature but having beautiful light. So yeah, that's one of my paintings. It's
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
I love it. I don't know if you can, is it too big to lift up? I was just
no,
curious.
not at all.
If anybody else hasn't seen your work, I just was like, oh my gosh, I'm just like, I'm so eager to see.
So this, you might not, this is pretty abstract, but this is a commission that's almost finished. This is the for a heart consultant, a heart surgeon. So that is my image of the heart.
Oh my God, beautiful.
So it's almost, I wanted to do it as a translucent heart, if you like, you know, so it's kind of like, if you can see that. So it's, so I wanted to give it life, as it were.
It's filled with life. It's amazing. Wow. Well, thank you for showing. I just saw it peeking over your shoulder this whole time, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope we can see that. Whoopsie, lost your headset.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just plumbing my stuff back in there, Tricia. I'll get in my earplugs. Sorry, carry on.
Lisa, did you have another question?
Well, I just wanted to, when you were talking earlier about how we plan for everything in life, you know, it's like, you know, births and birthdays and like we're all about life, and yet we just shy away. And I think it's really societal. I had a shared death experience. I actually accompanied my husband cross over when he died, which is just another, I mean, I didn't even know that was a possibility, you know, so, but I got to go to the other side, and I came back with some channeling abilities as well. And it's just changed my life. But I'm, like Tricia was saying, I'm like giddy about death, and and it can be too much, you know, for people, because it's like, what are you're insane. But I think our society is so closed down on that. And I mean, that's my goal. I mean, I think that's what my gift is to just help people not be so grief stricken that they stop living their life, you know, that it's just, it's a transition and ready to move on. So I love your messages and that you feel similarly.
Yeah, totally. Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And yeah, my final question to everyone, and I've done this like for several days, is really, is there anything that you can say to people who want more of a spiritual connection besides meditation? And this can be to you too, Lisa. Like, is there any, you know, final statement that you could say, hey, this is my best option for you to open to that intention to experience more of the other side?
Yeah, Lisa, you go ahead, please.
Oh gosh. Well, I guess a lot of what you were even saying is just being so present in the present moment. You know, it's when you're worrying about the past, you're not here. If you're worrying about the future, you're not here. And so the more you can really come in to this present moment right here, right now, that's where all the glory, all the gold, all the, you know, the living is happening. And again, I just want to thank David, because you really helped me remember that too. But that's, I do tell people that, but you know, it's hard. We get caught up in life and just all of these things that happen. So I love it. I'm going to rededicate myself to living in the moment.
Great. Fantastic. Yeah. I guess for me, I suppose it's just, it's the looking, I have to refer back to my life before my NDE and realize that I felt, although I got a lovely family, that as a person, I felt unworthy, and so I never felt any self-love, you know, and so that's quite a big thing. That's something that I try to emphasize. I think is really important, that ultimately we are all loved. You know, we're all part of the universe, and the universe wants us to keep creating and keep evolving and moving forward. You know, and that once you stop and realize that self-love, then the self-worth starts to happen, and then synchronicity starts to come into your life, and you realize that I don't know, you'll start to discover your authentic self, your true and pure soul, and then your pathway will start to open up, and doors will open for you slowly that you didn't realize would, that belong to you, if you like. So
I love that. You
normally
know,
what I
there's
say.
this idea that we all do know our higher self. And I believe that to be true. Like when we spend time with ourselves, we can connect with that higher part of ourselves that understands the whole journey. Because David and I were talking in this talk today about how there was a little bit of premonition or some signs that that accident was coming. And so when we get deep with ourselves, we have an understanding of how our life is going to unfold, where we're going, what we're meant to do, what the highest good is that we can bring to humanity. And really, it's just being in that flow of peace about being alive, being here, and sharing our gifts. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, if I could translate anything to people, I think it would be to regain some of that innocence. One of the messages from my near-death experience was be like a little child. So when you're in
absolutely.
nature, when you're creating, when you're expressing love with people, you are more like that inner
Yeah,
child part of yourself. And then when you meditate, you're in touch with that higher self. And so it's those two merging in this moment now to really just create a beautiful life. And that's what I hope people might take away from near-death experiences.
brilliantly put. That's great.